Hello, good morning everyone, and thank you for joining us on this morning's bite-sized webinar. For anyone who missed last week's session, you can ask questions using the Q&A panel on the right-hand side of your screen. For anyone who may be experiencing difficulties viewing today's session, I will post a link in the features content on the right-hand side as well, and if you follow that link, it should give you some tips on how to troubleshoot the issue. Hopefully that should resolve for you. You can also minimize this Q&A panel on the right-hand side by clicking on the X in the top right corner. If you're finding the content a bit small, that should help resolve that problem. Once again, I will be sending out a link to the webinar recording and the slide decks afterwards, so you can watch it back whenever you want. And that's all the housekeeping for this morning. So without further delay, I'll introduce Eddie Conroy, our service manager, who is joining us today and is going to talk to you about cybersecurity. You can take it away, Eddie.
Thanks, Anne. Morning, everyone. This morning really is just about giving you some simple tips for security while you're working at home, and hopefully you'll pick up a few bits that you'll find helpful as you keep working at home during this crisis. So I suppose the biggest point to make is the hackers know that most people are at home. They know that you're not working behind your office firewall. So they're actively seeking to exploit users and steal company assets or money or whatever they can get. They're always looking for the low-hanging fruit. So what are the easy targets that they can get? These people are professional criminals in most cases, and what they won't do is waste time on something that's a little bit difficult. They'll move on to the low-hanging fruit. So what's important for us all is not be the low-hanging fruit. And this morning is about looking at ways that we can take ourselves out of that bracket, move up into something a little bit more difficult, and hope that these hackers, criminals, move on to somewhere else. So a weak password is an obvious one. It can be easily guessed. So password is the first thing that we should work on. Give it a strong password. Length is the most crucial. So the more characters that are in it, the better, the harder it is to break. We can follow this with complexity using special characters, lowercase, uppercase, etc. And without doubt, the best move would be to move to two-factor or multi-factor authentication, where you get a code to your phone or you approve it somehow with your phone or some other way. This really moves us away from the low-hanging fruit. Suddenly, if it's two-factor, they're wasting time. They're just going to ignore it and move on. Default passwords come with both hardware and software. So when you get a router at home, it will have a default password. It's normally underneath or on the side of it. The same happens in software in a lot of cases. Be it Facebook or Twitter or whatever might prompt something, but Microsoft themselves have a default password that they'll suggest when you're setting up your Office 365. Now, computers are very poor at doing random, which might sound a bit strange, but they'll nearly always follow a pattern when they're generating passwords like that. So the Office 365 default passwords all follow a pattern. And if the hacker knows the pattern, they've already got a head start. So always change those default passwords and make it your own. And as we said, the more characters you can introduce, the better. Untrained users, this is massive. I mean, there's all sorts of issues that can come, but the better the users are trained and the more that we've shown them what to look out for in terms of social engineering, etc. Phishing emails are still the biggest problem of how these things are getting in. Lately, we've seen some really sophisticated phishing emails, and I'll give an example of one that I saw in the last month, where the hackers had gone to the trouble of investigating a company in Dublin who were issuing tenders. They had got the correct person, they'd got his email address, they'd actually gone to the trouble of copying the emails that he was sending out exactly, but they changed the 2 links within where you applied, and that's how they were picking up the information. So the people were filling in names, addresses, whatever, in the application into this spurious website. So they're working very hard at improving their game. So it's important that people train all users. Anybody that needs help or is worried about an email or anything that's come in, they should know who to contact. We'll talk about that in a second. What can you do yourself at home? Obviously, if you get prompted for updates, let them go ahead. Same with antivirus updates or any additions that come down for it. If there's unnecessary software on the work laptop or even on your own personal laptop that you don't use or need anymore, I would say uninstall it, get rid of it. If you're on a secure VPN for work, when it's not in use, disconnect it. When you go away from your screen, just lock it, Control-Alt-Delete and lock it, and then I know when you come back you have to put in your password again, but it's a small sacrifice and it can make a difference. The next one, listen, the easiest thing in the world is to save passwords so you don't have to remember them, but if they're held in the browser, it means they're available to a hacker should they get in and get access to the file. Again, it gives them a head start, so if at all possible, don't store passwords, especially on a work laptop. And default browsers, Edge, etc., that come with PCs and laptops, they're not as secure as Google Chrome or Firefox. So if you could download one of those two and use it, just get used to it. There's no problem with them, but they have found to be more secure than any of the other browsers. When you're working at home, we're saying just think twice about what you're doing. Obviously, you're in an unfamiliar environment for most of us, so don't take anything for granted. Don't mix in personal computing. So you get a link, there's a lot of stuff going around at the moment, be it in email or WhatsApp, etc. Videos, music, things, people sharing it. It's understandable given the current crisis, but if you're working, best not to open those things. Leave them until later, until you've closed out of your VPN or you're closed out of your workspace, and then have a look at them. And we're all guilty of this, looking at the news or clicking on headlines, or somebody sends you something of real interest. But do be careful. If it's an unfamiliar link or some website that you haven't visited before or you're not familiar with, just take the time to check it out. Maybe Google it to see if it's got any history of problems. And it's a small thing, it'll take an extra few seconds, but it could make a big difference. On the left there, you just see examples. Obviously, the COVID-19 is a big subject that they can use now for a scam to get things in. It's of interest to everybody, so people would tend to click on it. They know that, so just be careful. Similarly, anything you get from banks or financial institutions suggesting changes or security updates or whatever, that would be almost never sent from a financial institution. They might encourage you to contact your provider or talk to your own antivirus people, but they would never really send you anything to install to make you more secure. Likewise, they would never ask you for your password or your PIN code, etc. So if you receive something that you're suspicious about, report it to either the head of IT in your business or to your provider, in which case it's probably us. If you email it into itsupport@trojan.ie, it'll create a ticket straight away and our lads will check it out. We'll contact you and see. Email is still the biggest vector for all of this malware and problems to get in. They hit you with something that looks familiar or seems to be from a familiar source. You open it inadvertently or you click on the link because you think it's from somebody trustworthy and they've dropped something in. You may not notice the problem for weeks because generally these things will sit there, wait for their opportunity, be it on a weekend or something when people are not at work or watching what's going on. And when you come back in, you have ransomware or whatever on the system. So if you weren't expecting the email, even if it's from somebody that you know, maybe ring them and ask, why did you send me this spreadsheet, or why did you send me this exe, what's it for? If they didn't send it, then delete it. Never be afraid to contact us. We would prefer that you raise the red flag every time rather than we miss one with you. So I would encourage you, if you're anyways at all suspicious or concerned about something, or be it a program or an email or something that you've got, either drop us a line or email IT support at Trojan. It'll open a ticket and we'll talk to you about it. We would rather that, as I say, than it gets in and then we have to clean up the mess. So that's really it for this morning. If there are any questions, as Anne said, you can post them up there on the top right. and we'll see if we can answer them.
So there's a question in here, Eddie. Can you set Windows password for two-factor authentication? And if so, how do you do it?
Yes, if you are using AD domain through Microsoft 365, so that's something that have to be configured and set up. It's not done for a lot of people. We have it ourselves here, but yes is the answer, but it takes a bit of work. So we can look at that. We can call whoever that is and discuss it with them and see from there.
Yeah, so if you want to, you can send your email address, maybe, or your number or something in here, or you can email me back directly and we'll talk to you about that in a bit more detail, whoever asked that question. There's another question here, Eddie. Is it okay to send an email back to the contact who sent you the suspicious email?
Yes, but I would put in proviso, received this, just a little bit concerned about it. If it wasn't you that sent it to me, don't click, because it may have been spoofed. It mightn't have been them that sent it. So the last thing you want them to do is to click the links if they're malware. So yes, or even just send a new email. Did you send me that Excel spreadsheet, or did you send me that link, whatever it was, and wait for the answer. So yeah, that'd be
Perfect.
no problem.
Then another one, if you have already auto-saved passwords, how do you get rid of it?
There's a way to just clear them out. It's in the settings. Again, safest bet would be to just call us, ring into the help desk and get one of the lads to show you how to do it, and then you won't get rid of anything that you wanted to keep. Obviously with those, you would need to know them. So yeah, I'd say log a ticket, talk to one of the engineers, we'll show you how to do it once, and then we'll have it for again. There are pieces of software that will manage your passwords for you securely. It's better than keeping them there. So again, we can show you that, and you can have that going forward then.
Great. Then if you get a suspicious email into your personal email, where do you go for help with it when it's not work related?
If you're a Trojan customer, just ring anyway. That's no problem at all. It will take us 30 seconds to check it out. We'll know from the links if it's dodgy or not. So just give us a call and we'll have a look. We can pop on a team viewer or whatever, and we'll have a look for you.
Great. So I'm not sure, there might be a few more questions. We'll leave it a few more minutes and let people, if they have any more questions, come back to us. But I suppose the biggest thing with cybersecurity idea is to kind of have a zero trust policy, isn't it? If you think it's suspicious, to just check it.
Yeah, well, definitely at the moment, because as we mentioned, people are at home, they're outside the work firewall. The hackers are in overdrive because they know this. And yeah, I would have zero tolerance for everything. Just double check everything, make sure it was sent from the person that it is relevant. And if you're in doubt, ring us.
Perfect. Perfect. I'm just waiting to see if there's any more questions coming in. If you do have any questions, or if you think of anything afterwards, you can always email me, and we'll try and get back to you with an answer to everything that we can. Let's see. Yeah, I'm just keeping an eye on it here. So today's our second webinar. So next week we're actually looking at Microsoft Outlook and tips and tricks for Microsoft Outlook. So I'm hoping you can join us next week again, and you might get some useful tips for that. Let's see, we have a few more left. Hi folks, does ransomware most commonly arrive as a link or an executable file?
It's usually a link. It can be either, but it often comes in within something. So you may click, you may not think anything's happened, and it sits there possibly for days, even for a month. You know, some of them, something like a logic bomb would have a time and a date on it where it'll go off, be it a bank holiday, or if it came from America, it might be Thanksgiving or some time that they expect people to be off. It'll trigger on that date, probably during the night, so it has 7 or 8 hours work done before you even come in. That's how they tend to work, but it can come in many ways. Spurious link usually takes you to a website, you're browsing, or you click to download something. It looks innocent enough, nothing happens, so therefore you think nothing's wrong. And like I say, payload will only arrive sometime later.
I know you said in your presentation there, a lot of the time you wouldn't know it's there, so it might just be that your system's gone a bit slow and you don't realise that anything's actually happening in the background at all.
Yeah, with ransomware, you're probably going to see that files are starting to lock, but with other types of malware, yeah, you would probably notice a downgrade in performance. It's gradually getting worse, where it might be flooding out emails or something. But slowdowns are worth reporting as well, just to get them checked out. It could be that you need more RAM or something simple, or there's some process running that was taking it up. We'll see that, but it's always worth checking out. If you're anyways worried, give us a call and we'll check it for you.
As was in the worst case scenario, if you have been hit and if your files have all been locked, what is the first thing you should do?
Very simply, disconnect the network cable or the cable that's plugged into the router. If you're at home and it's plugged in direct to the router, just plug that out. Don't turn off the PC, because sometimes we can find evidence in the cache. If it's already hit, it's already hit. There's not much more you can do on the computer itself.
Yeah.
But if you unplug it from the internet, it stops it spreading any further, or if you're in work or on a network, it stops it getting any further around the network. But leave it on, and it may help in the recovery, may not. In a lot of cases, you're either going to pay the ransom or go to a backup. But the only step you need to take, plug out the cable.
Perfect. See, so I might just give it another minute and see if there's any other questions coming in. Like I say, if you do think of anything afterwards, there's no problem in contacting us and asking us. We'll answer your questions for you at any time. And you will get a recording of today's session afterwards as well. I'll send it out later on today, so you can watch it back and take it in again when you have some time. I think that might be all we have for this morning, Eddie.
Okay, great. As I say, if they come in or ring us, there's no problem. We'll take any questions.
It's great. Thanks everyone for joining us, and we'll look forward to seeing you next Thursday for Microsoft Outlook. And we'll talk to you soon. Bye now.